In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of men can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense, and today it still is common sense.
I'm Mark Zaccaria.
I'm April Giarrusso. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. If you feel the fun should not yet be over at the expense of the cooler and warmer tourist campaign, you've come to the right place for yet another fix. Or, if you believe that the financial troubles of the city of Providence are the just desserts of decades of head-in-the-sand management, and you'd like to hear more of the details, you've also found your spot. Common Sense will analyze all that and more in our lead-off segment. Then we will feature State Representative Patricia Morgan's regular in-depth interview. This week, Pat checks in with her colleague, State Rep Sherry Roberts. They'll go into the details of Sherry's work on behalf of the folks in Coventry and West Greenwich. Between segments of that detailed briefing, Mark and I will check back in and keep things sardonic as we ask the question, are you kidding me? Finally, Portsmouth's Jeff Richard will bring the broadcast home with his wit and wisdom on the subject of cannabis in Little Rhodey. To get us started, though, let's have some analysis of several of the top news stories affecting the Ocean State this week. Mark?
Thanks, April. It seems that the Rhode Island cooler and warmer logo is the graphic faux pas that just will not go away. By now, we all know the narrative. The botched rollout of an ill-conceived crest of heraldry for the pitch for Ocean State tourism was met with stunned silence. Then, the ridicule of the masses after revelations of its $500,000 cost. That meant the chief marketing officer for the Commerce Department lost her job, and the governor held a late Friday afternoon presser that was vaguely apologetic. That could have been the end of the story. Instead, Commerce Secretary Stephen Pryor gave a particularly uncomfortable performance during an interview with WPRI's Perry Russell. Pryor stumbled over his answers, parsing his words in the tradition of Bill Clinton's question of what the meaning of is. The secretary never said he didn't remember the timeline. He simply repeated that he couldn't say what it was, or that he was not going to say what it was. Is there a better way to get an investigative reporter digging into details? It certainly worked well for Stephen Pryor. Ocean State Current editor Justin Katz watched the interview and decided to spend a little time reviewing Capitol TV. Katz found a tape of a January 14th House Study Commission hearing in which Commerce Corporation Chief of Staff Wade Gibson testified the department was testing the logo and tagline, designing the new license plates for a July introduction, and planning the coordinated rollout of the whole plan. Gibson claimed that the regional tourism bureaus were involved in the process of developing the tagline and logo, which began with the start of the fiscal year last July. The firms chosen for the work started on November 1st. The Commerce Corp brought concepts to the regional bureaus on December 1st. Next, the graphic designer developed the logo and tagline, which the Commerce Corp poll tested with more than 1,000 people, which Gibson said happened right before the holidays. Newly hired Chief Marketing Officer Betsy Wall was seated next to Gibson during this testimony. In his piece, Justin Katz noted that Ms. Wall had also been hired just before the holidays. So he also asked how the governor could have blamed Wall's poor judgment for the logo that had been completed before her arrival. Katz also suggested that Pryor's discomfort during the WPRI interview was probably because he realized Betsy Wall had been the sacrificial lamb in this ceremony. So who is the real villain of the story? And are you really surprised, Raimondo administration, that this matter just will not fade from memory? April?
Print journalism is finally catching a break. Well, sort of. The Providence Journal is, at least. Their building owners have secured a tax deal with the City of Providence that will save them millions in property tax. The Providence City Council approved a 12-year tax reduction agreement for the building on Fountain Street. The agreement will save the building's owners, Fountain View Owner LLC, about $1.12 million over the life of the agreement, according to an estimate by the city's assessor office. Here's how the agreement breaks down. They will receive a 12-year tax discount that gradually increases to full taxation in the 13th year. That means that for the first 3 years of this tax stabilization agreement, property tax payment will be frozen based on an assessment of $6 million and at the 2015 tax rate. In the 4th year, they will pay that base amount in addition to 11% of the difference between the base and full taxes due. That will keep increasing year over year until lucky number 13 comes around. These numbers come from a dispute between Fountain View and the City of Providence, with the city assessing the value of the property at $9.2 million, while the company insisted on assessing it at $3.3 million, which is what they paid for it. I mean, come on, that's not how property tax works. But A for effort, and it worked well enough since both parties met in the middle at the $6 million figure. Important to note, the Projo was sold in September of 2014, and the previous owner sold the building separately, so the newspaper only rents space in that building. Okay, maybe it's not a big victory for the print industry, but if Fountain View has its way, they will attract larger office tenants and potentially have retail and restaurant locations on their ground floor. Mark?
April, we've been talking about the pension fund woes of the City of Providence for as long as Common Sense has been on the air. Frankly, the sorry state of the financing for already accrued but as yet unpaid benefits there has been a matter of crisis for accountants for far longer than that. In 2012, then-Mayor Angel Tavares undertook a restructuring of the city's pensions, which was supposed to right the finances and keep Providence safe from impending bankruptcy. Well, 65 firefighters who did not vote to accept those harsh new terms sued the city to keep their old deal. That suit just went to bench trial last week. Opening testimony was said by court watchers to favor the plaintiffs. If this group wins the right to opt out, then the city's pension fund's descent into fiscal darkness will accelerate noticeably. Enter Wainwright Investment Counsel, LLC. That firm has been the Providence Pension Fund's investment advisor for more than a dozen years. It's an appointed position, so Mayors Alorza, Tavares, and Cicilline have all reappointed Wainwright. Each year, the pension fund issues a report of its performance depending on the growth of its investments to greatly augment the direct contributions made by the city and its covered employees. This year's report contained an odd addendum. According to financial guru Mike Riley in his Go Local Prov Mindsetters column, Section D1 of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report to the City featured the Wainwright Addendum, which broke out cash flows to and from the pension advisor since 1995. The amount of return on funds managed by the advisor, while consistently positive, were far less than the overall $100 million plus claimed by the city's investment commission, headed by the mayor. So, there appears to be no detail available on the bulk of that figure since Wainwright only handles a fraction of it. Mike Riley concluded that Providence is either inflating the dollar amount of assets in the pension plan, or it is earning zero return on $100 million of unexplained assets that aren't managed by anybody. The former sounds far more likely than the latter to me. So once again, the story that falls under the heading boring but important covers a crisis that has been unacknowledged and unaddressed for years by successive Providence administrations. During all that time, however, the scope of the problem has been growing exponentially. Wherever you live in the Ocean State, you can be sure you will be called upon to pony up for the Providence pensioners some fine day. There just isn't enough money anywhere else to make even the scaled-back pension promises whole. Get ready for it. Here it comes. April?
Thanks, Mark. Now, before any of our particularly astute viewers quickly move to the Carolinas, we'll move on to the first segment of Representative Pat Morgan's interview. We will do so via our usual route of a pit stop for what's ahead on this edition of Common Sense, and even a short detour to pose the perennial question, are you kidding me? Freeze! Step away from that remote. There are plenty of items of interest left on this week's edition of Common Sense. State Representative Pat Morgan continues her interview with her colleague, Rep. Sherry Roberts, on what life is like in the State House of Representatives. And you wouldn't want to miss Mark or me when we drop back in to pose the deeply philosophical question, are you kidding me? So if you're in for all that, why not stick around as Portsmouth pundit Jeff Richard enlightens us on the topic of marijuana and our immediate future. Hey, I said don't touch that dial. Members of the Providence Police Department will begin to wear body-worn cameras for a pilot program. It's like a police reality show. Oh wait, that already exists. It's called Cops. Are you kidding me? I'm actually super excited for this. Now, of course, there are pros and cons to our law enforcement wearing body cameras, but if it protects our law enforcement officers and the public, why not give it a try? In fact, I'm going to show my support by wearing my own body camera for this segment. Get this on, don't fall off my head. So it's not quite the same as theirs, but come on. You're interested to look at what I'm looking at. Don't act like this won't be the next video you click on YouTube. You know, when this show is done, of course. This pilot program will put body-worn cameras on 10 police officers over the next 2 months and is the first step toward outfitting all 400 plus city officers with the technology. If the city can win federal grants, it will be the largest department in New England to utilize this technology. Stephen M. Paré, the Public Safety Commissioner, stated that this protects the community and the police officers and is our best evidence in an arrest. These cameras can strengthen a criminal case, reduce internal affairs complaints, and protect police officers from false allegations. The department will now be able to better understand what officers encounter when out in the community. These 10 cameras will be provided by Taser International and VIEVU, making the rollout free. But the 5-year commitment is expensive. It will cost around $1.6 million for the storage equipment and cameras for all our Providence police officers over those 5 years. This program could disappear if we don't get federal grants, which makes sense because it's not like the city of Providence can pay for much of anything anyway. Burn. Now there is policy in place on how these cameras will be used, when they should record, and the chain of custody for recordings. But let's face it, the average citizen wants to make sure they don't end up on YouTube. You know, unless they're confident in their intelligence and beauty. In fact, the video will now be will not be easily accessible to the public, unless of course it is entered into evidence in a trial. Here's a list of when the cameras will record. During all traffic stops and pursuits, all encounters with reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, all building searches, all arrests or protective custodies, and any interaction that escalates and becomes adversarial. There are also times when the cameras will not record, such as to avoid compromising identities or investigative techniques of undercover officers, dealing with victims of sex crimes or child abuse, during administrative duties at the department, because boring. Also in places of reasonable expectation of privacy, during strip searches of detainees, because gross, and even when potential witnesses or victims request confidentiality or request not to be recorded so long as the situation is not confrontational. So if you're opposed to this program, give it a chance. It's a pilot program, and hope if it goes well that we get that federal grant. Are you kidding me? Have you ever wondered what you really get out of all the time you spend watching Common Sense TV? Well, how about this for an answer? $1,000. That's right. An anonymous benefactor has donated that sum as prize money in our inaugural viewer contest. All you have to do is create a meme for the RI Tourism campaign that beats the Cooler and Warmer logo we've been having so much fun with. Well, you also have to beat everyone else who submits an entry. But with a little effort, you could do that too. You see, the winner will be chosen by popular vote of all our viewers as they respond to the entries on our website. To get started, go to contest-commonsenseritv.nationbuilder.com. You'll find all the directions and even a few examples of do-it-yourself logos that will not be entered in the contest. So go out there and prove to the governor that ordinary Rhode Islanders are better than slick New York agencies, and a lot less expensive too, when it comes to touting our home state. Enter today, and you could get a check for $1,000 next month.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we have as our guest Representative Sherry Roberts, who represents District 29, which is Central Coventry and West Greenwich.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you, Patricia.
Well, thank you for coming. Sherry, you are now in the second year of your term, your first term.
Yes.
Any surprises? Anything that you think is different from what you were expecting when you got up to the State House?
Well, I did expect there would be corruption. We all know that there's a lot of corruption up there at the State House. But I think I'm a little surprised by the amount of undermining that goes on up there and just to what extent there is corruption in the many different maneuvers that are going on up there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really disturbing to me, and I know to you, is that what's best for the common good, for the average family, doesn't get talked about very much up there.
No, I don't hear a lot of that.
No.
I mean, it seems like all I see is, this one's doing for this one. If you're willing to do this, we can negotiate, and I'll pass your bill, and I get this out of it. And I don't seem to hear too much about, what the people want.
Yeah, a lot of lobbyists, a lot of special interests, a lot of those insider deals that are going on all the time. You vote for this, I'll give you that kind of stuff. Of course, I think about the toll law in relation to that. Clearly a bad law for the average family out there. $45 million annual tax increase.
Yes.
Yet it got done.
Yeah, because they had their own agenda. They knew in advance before that vote ever came to the floor what was going to happen, or it wouldn't have been brought to the floor for a vote. And that's something that a lot of citizens of Rhode Island just don't realize, is that a lot of things don't get to the floor unless they have it pre-planned that it's going to pass with enough votes, regardless of what the Republicans want. If they say, no, we don't want that, well, they really don't care. If they have enough votes, they're going to pass what they want, and that's it.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of, I think of our founding fathers, and I'm sure that we would have wanted us to debate, have a deliberative body where all the sides of an issue were debated thoroughly, and it just doesn't get to happen.
That's not the way it seems that it works here in Rhode Island now.
No, the toll law, again, I'll bring that up. It's something that's really going to be a weight on Rhode Island families, consumers, on our economy. And yet, when we were trying to get the information, I mean, just going to DOT, and I know you were helping me with that, when we put in the access to public records requests, unheard of, that we have to put in a formal request to get information, and yet we had to under this administration. And the documents were not forthcoming, not easy to access, not easy to understand. I know you fought really hard with me against the toll law. You actually went through your district in the fall and asked the people of your district what they thought. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yes, I did. I did a can't think of the right word right now.
A flyer?
Yeah, it was a survey.
Okay.
It's gonna be the right word.
Survey.
It was a survey just to ask them about what some of their concerns were, and I did have a chance to talk to many people. Not everybody, unfortunately, but I did my best to get out there and find out, because to me, I really did when I ran. It was for the people. I think they realize that now. I think they realize I'm not just one of those politicians who say one thing and go do another. So I'm hearing a lot of people that are happy with the work that I'm doing, and they're very appreciative and they're thankful. And I just have to say, I have one of the best districts. I don't care what anyone says.
Oh, no, I do. I do.
But
when you did the survey, what kinds of things did you ask? What kinds of things were you hearing from your constituents?
many different things. There were a few different things on there. You know, obviously, they want less taxes. They want less bureaucracy. You know, less regulating. Of course, small businesses are hurt. We know that. So we definitely have to work on some more of that. And I know there's been some ridiculous legislation that's gone up there, has been put up there with the 2 weeks advance work schedule type thing. We know that's going to hurt businesses. It's just ridiculous. I think that was something personal, that whoever the legislator was that submitted that, it's probably a personal thing. That's what it smells of to me.
Well, whether it was personal or not, the problem with that was that it was going to hurt jobs.
Correct.
I'm sure that was something that you heard from your constituents.
Absolutely.
They are really afraid of their jobs being permanent, of their jobs paying the bills.
Yes, yeah, they're concerned about that. They don't like it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, there's a real uncertainty. I hear it like you. I mean, they always do focus on the taxes, because taxes is a huge item out of everybody's paycheck. And that paycheck isn't growing. So as taxes go up, it's taking a bigger and bigger percentage of their available spending money.
Yes.
It's really been very, very tough for families. You have been a strong voice for the people of your district, fighting for them against the tolls, against that job-killing bill. Makes you a target in this coming election.
Oh yes, one of the top targets from what I hear.
I hear you're one of the top targets too.
There is a consequence when you go up there and fight for the people and work against the will of the entrenched people in there who are not working for the people, and they will try to silence you, and they will try to take you out. They will do whatever it takes to get you out, no matter what. So it's going to be a tough race. I'm aware of that. People are warning me that, you know, I'm going to be pretty much slammed and made to look bad in the public, and that's fine. You know, I guess I'm doing my job, so that's okay with me.
Well, I guess if you, it's a credit to you that you do have opposition, because it means you're doing something right.
Thank you.
Right? Especially in our Rhode Island system of government. If you're not having a challenge, it probably means that you're going along to get along. And that's not been good for the average families in Rhode Island.
No.
I mean, when we look at our jobs climate, at our business climate, at the overregulation, at our really high property taxes, that's because too many people have been saying yes too long without looking at its effect on average families. Brings us to Central Coventry Fire District. I know you've been really helping me with that. That's a fight that's been going on for 5 years. And they are having a meeting here pretty soon. Do you know when that meeting is?
No, I don't. I'm going to find out.
Thursday, May 5th, I can
Okay.
tell you that.
Okay.
They're having their, it's not an annual meeting. They actually only passed a 6-month budget, so this is to come back and pass another 6-month budget. But there are some good things to report in Central Coventry.
Yes, the taxes are being reduced, and I had a hand in that, working behind the scenes. That's what people probably don't realize, but working with the board. And we anticipate that they will probably have another tax decrease.
Yes, sometime in the future.
Yes.
It's hard when you're already getting a too high bill to say, you know, the bill comes in the door and people are just saying, oh God, another bill. But the truth is it has gone down 20%. And because of the work that board has done with your and my help, they've been able to restructure stuff. They're paying off debt. It's good news for the people in
Yes.
Central Coventry.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, listen, we're going to take a break and we're going to be right back.
The state of Rhode Island may be poor in entrepreneurial businesses, growing so they throw off taxes and employ more of the locals. What the Ocean State can boast, though, is a rat's nest of conflicting low-cost housing statutes that do grow and grow so they can burden more of the locals. Are you kidding me? No. And it's getting worse. Not only do we have laws today on low and moderate income housing which cannot be complied with, but now new legislation is being offered to impose cash fines on cities and towns that do not comply with the uncompliable. House Bill 7985 is sponsored by Representatives Morin, Casey, Carson, Phillips, and Maldonado. It proposes fines to municipalities of $2,000 per year per housing unit of shortfall from the state planning office's goal for that city or town. Or, to put it another way, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Here's the problem. The whole Rhode Island policy for low and moderate income housing is based on the state planning department's vision of social engineering, not on providing shelter for citizens who earn low or moderate incomes. How so? Well, House Bill 7985 continues the long-standing tradition of defining low-income housing as that in which the government has invested. Since the Rhode Island Housing and Mortgage Finance Corporation has not been funded to make such investments for years, the cities and towns are locked into a no-win situation when it comes to compliance. Also, the law requires deed restrictions for 99 years to keep any such property defined as affordable. Well, that means we are tying the hands of those on the lower rungs of the economic ladder when it comes to the investment potential of their homes. Look, if we eliminated the government investment requirement and simply joined HUD in accepting mobile homes and manufactured homes as allowable units, our whole state would be in compliance today. Instead, we persist in trying to insinuate government into every aspect of life and don't even have the good grace to be embarrassed when we create impossible situations as we do so. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Representative Sherry Roberts from Central Coventry and West Greenwich, District 29, a Republican colleague. Sherry, we were talking a little bit about Central Coventry Fire District, and I really just want to kind of put a bow on that for our listeners. That actually has been going on for 5 years. And your predecessor, Lisa Tomaso, was one of those representatives who did everything she could to stop reform from happening in that fire district. The people there were looking at a 65% excuse me, tax increase, and they just didn't want to hear anything about it up there in the State House, and she was an integral part in trying to keep that tax increase and the cushy benefits and pay in place. And I am just so thankful that you came along and looked at the people in your district, the average families, and understood they needed a break. And you've been just terrific at supporting the people in Central Coventry.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that when you were going and doing this survey, that's something that did come out. When they're talking property taxes, they're talking fire taxes as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's been clearly a big issue in the district. You know, everybody's got all kinds of ideas, but you have to really look at the situation and try to determine what the best thing to do is. It's not an easy, there's no easy answer, really. But whatever they choose to do is what I'm going to support. If they say they don't want any more taxes, they want them to go down, then they need to be heard. That's what they want, and if they elect you to a seat, that's what you do. You don't go against their will.
And you've been a really great advocate for average families having some control over their lives, not just their money, but also their children. I know that you put in a bill on the HPV virus or vaccine.
Correct.
You want to explain a little bit about that? We actually did a program not too long ago, so hopefully people were listening to that program. But this was about parental rights.
Yes, I think the Department of Health, they just mandated it so that parents are required to get this shot in order for the kids to stay in school. Well, it's the parents' right to decide what's good for their own kids. And I don't think it's right for government overreach like that to tell parents what their children should be getting for shots. I mean, this is not something that's contagious through the air. So, it's something that's transmitted sexually. But really, are our kids having sex in school? Because they shouldn't be.
Hopefully not in the 5th grade.
No, so this is ridiculous. And that piece of legislation that I submitted was for the purpose of letting the parents know that they have the option to opt out. And it promotes transparency and good communication. And right now, I don't see that the Department of Health is interested in any of that. So,
I think nobody cares about their children more than the parents of that child.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And if it's a good idea, and if it's going to help their child to be healthier, better prepared, they're going to do it.
Well, of course. So if they're saying, we don't want to do this, there's probably a reason to be concerned.
Yeah, and if the Department of Health doesn't agree, then convince them. Give them the data. Give them the information. Don't just mandate it because you know better than everybody else. There's a real disease in our state government right now. I think that they know better than the rest of us how we should live our lives. They know how we should spend our money. They know what we should do with our cars. They know what they are going to force us to do things with our children. We did a program, and that vaccine, though it may be good for a lot of people, is bad for a significant number. And parents need to know about those dangers before.
Yes, and that is also included in the legislation, that they should include that information when they notify the parents what the risks are with taking that vaccine.
Yeah. Good ideas sell themselves, though. I think if you have a good idea and you present all the data and all the reasoning to people, if it's a good idea, they'll agree with you. The toll law, they hid the data. They didn't want to give the reasoning. They couldn't sell it to the people because it was a bad idea.
It absolutely was. The good thing on that, though, is that I think this year, the next election, I really believe this is our opportunity. People should not lose hope. I think a lot of people are discouraged because of all the things that are just pushed on us here in this state. But they should not be discouraged because this is the election year. I believe there are so many people upset with the tolls, numerous other things.
Just the direction our government is taking, but
Yes.
tolls was kind of the boil
Yes.
that was popped or lanced, right?
Yes.
It just was ugly. The way it was done, the effects on average families that it's going to have, that I think, I'm hoping that people won't forget it by November, and I'm hoping in the meantime that people stand up and reach out and say, how can I help? Can I run for office? Because we need folks to run.
Yes, absolutely. There are some new faces coming forward, and we need to continue to, I think anybody who voted for the tolls, it's time to go because it's time to work for the people. This is our opportunity, this next election, to get out there and vote in some new people, keep the ones that are good.
Like you.
We know, and you, we're on the people's side. But there's a lot of people, as we know, that are in it for self-interest. They need to go. So.
And let's just talk about that, because you ran for the first time out of the blue 2 years ago, right?
Yes.
Hadn't been involved in politics, just knew that you wanted to make a difference for the people in your district. You saw things that were broken, you wanted to help fix them. How hard was it to run? Don't make it too bad now, because we're trying to talk people into stepping up.
Oh, I know. No, it's worth it. It is a lot of work. So, you know, it's fun though. I have to say, it's well worth the work. Well worth it. And to have the opportunity, I think, when people put their confidence in you, it feels really good. And of course, you know, the whole idea that you could make a change really is possible, but not without people coming forward and being willing to step up to the plate, because we really can make change. It's there. The opportunity is there. It's wide open. Anybody can run. So
anybody can run. And I know that you had an opponent against it. It was Lisa Tommaso. She was a favorite of the speaker, so you had a tough race. And despite that, despite the money and the mailings and all that, you prevailed. And you prevailed because you were there for the average families, trying to help them.
Yes, and I will continue to stay there.
And there are more people, I'm putting a pitch in here, there are more people who can step up. You don't have to be a political wizard, you don't have to have been involved in government in the past. You just have to have that willingness to help average families to get ahead, to have secure lives. You've done a great job so far, and I'm sure the people are going to respond to that, despite that bullseye that's on your back because you voted against the toll law.
That's okay. I love the bullseye. It just challenges me to keep on working harder for the people. That's all.
All right, and you've done other things for your district, so we're going to take a break right now. We're going to talk about some of the other things that have been percolating in the State House with your help.
Surging deficits are threatening the city of Providence. Gasp! Are you kidding me? Are you surprised? Mayor Jorge Lorza cited findings from a White House-funded report that projects a $176 million budget shortfall in the year 2026. Wow. Key factors in our, quote, financial imbalance, unquote, include cost of pensions, health care and benefits, and significant state aid cuts since the Great Depression. You know that the Great Depression was a while ago, right? So how or why? You know what? Let's just move on and see what else is going wrong with the city of Providence that is leading to this dismal financial future. Maybe we can play a game of it, see how many you can guess. Other factors include growing costs of deferred maintenance to city roads, bridges, and schools. Then there's the city's approach to budgeting, which rewards short-term thinking and forces us to scramble for one-time fixes instead of focusing on the investments we need to succeed. By the way, that's a quote from Mayor Elorza. So then you recognize what you're doing, and it took a report to click that light bulb on? He even cites that these challenges are a result of decades in a system that looks to one-time fixes. Again, I'm going to ask you, are you surprised? Maybe you couldn't have come up with that figure all on your own, but you had to know that, similar to the hit HBO show Game of Thrones, winter is coming. So now the city is working towards investments for the future and overcoming these debilitating burdens. Easier said than done. But if Providence has a bleak future, how do you think that will look for the rest of the state? Sad but true, if the capital city goes down, the rest of us go down with it. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Representative Sherry Roberts from Central Coventry and West Greenwich, District 29, a Republican colleague. Sherry, we were talking a little bit about Central Coventry Fire District, and I really just want to kind of put a bow on that for our listeners. That actually has been going on for 5 years, and your predecessor, Lisa Tomaso, was one of those representatives who did everything she could to stop reform from happening in that fire district. The people there were looking at a 65% tax increase, and they just didn't want to hear anything about it up there in the State House, and she was an integral part in trying to keep that tax increase and the cushy benefits and pay in place. And I am just so thankful that you came along and looked at the people in your district, the average families, and understood they needed a break. And you've been just terrific at supporting the people in Central Coventry.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that when you were going and doing this survey, that's something that did come out. When they're talking property taxes, they're talking fire taxes as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's been clearly a big issue in the district. You know, everybody's got all kinds of ideas, but you have to really look at the situation and try to determine what the best thing to do is. It's not an easy, there's no easy answer, really. But whatever they choose to do is what I'm going to support. If they say they don't want any more taxes, they want them to go down, then they need to be heard. That's what they want, and if they elect you to a seat, that's what you do. You don't go against their will.
And you've been a really great advocate for average families having some control over their lives, not just their money, but also their children. I know that you put in a bill on the HPV virus or vaccine.
Correct.
You want to explain a little bit about that? We actually did a program not too long ago, so hopefully people were listening to that program. But this was about parental rights.
Yes, I think the Department of Health, they just mandated it so that parents are required to get this shot in order for the kids to stay in school. Well, it's the parents' right to decide what's good for their own kids. And I don't think it's right for government overreach like that to tell parents what their children should be getting for shots. I mean, this is not something that's contagious through the air. So, it's something that's transmitted sexually. But really, are our kids having sex in school? Because they shouldn't be.
Hopefully not in the 5th grade.
No, so this is ridiculous. And that piece of legislation that I submitted was for the purpose of letting the parents know that they have the option to opt out. And it promotes transparency and good communication. And right now, I don't see that the Department of Health is interested in any of that. So,
I think nobody cares about their children more than the parents of that child.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And if it's a good idea, and if it's going to help their child to be healthier, better prepared, they're going to do it.
Well, of course. So if they're saying, we don't want to do this, there's probably a reason to be concerned.
Yeah, and if the Department of Health doesn't agree, then convince them. Give them the data. Give them the information. Don't just mandate it because you know better than everybody else. There's a real disease in our state government right now. I think that they know better than the rest of us how we should live our lives. They know how we should spend our money. They know what we should do with our cars. They know what they are going to force us to do things with our children. We did a program, and that vaccine, though it may be good for a lot of people, is bad for a significant number. And parents need to know about those dangers before.
Yes, and that is also included in the legislation, that they should include that information when they notify the parents what the risks are with taking that vaccine.
Yeah. Good ideas sell themselves, though. I think if you have a good idea and you present all the data and all the reasoning to people, if it's a good idea, they'll agree with you. The toll law, They hid the data. They didn't want to give the reasoning. They couldn't sell it to the people because it was a bad idea.
It absolutely was. The good thing on that, though, is that I think this year, the next election, I really believe this is an opportunity. People should not lose hope. I think a lot of people are discouraged because of all the things that are just pushed on us here in this state. But they should not be discouraged because this is the election year. I believe there are so many people upset with the tolls, numerous other things.
Just the direction our government is taking. But
Yes.
tolls was kind of that boil
Yes.
that was popped or lanced, right?
Yes.
It just was ugly. The way it was done, the effects on average families that it's going to have, that I think, I'm hoping that people won't forget it by November, and I'm hoping in the meantime that people stand up and reach out and say, how can I help? Can I run for office? Because we need folks to run.
Yes, absolutely. There are some new faces coming forward, and we need to continue to, I think anybody who voted for the tolls, it's time to go because it's time to work for the people. This is our opportunity, this next election, to get out there and vote in some new people, keep the ones that are good.
Like you.
We know, and you, we're on the people's side. But there's a lot of people, as we know, that are in it for self-interest. They need to go. So.
And let's just talk about that, because you ran for the first time out of the blue 2 years ago, right?
Yes.
Hadn't been involved in politics, just knew that you wanted to make a difference for the people in your district. You saw things that were broken, you wanted to help fix them. How hard was it to run? Don't make it too bad now, because we're trying to talk people into stepping up.
Oh, I know. No, it's worth it. It is a lot of work. So, you know, it's fun, though. I have to say, it's well worth the work. Well worth it. And to have the opportunity, I think, when people put their confidence in you, it feels really good. And of course, you know, the whole idea that you could make a change, it really is possible, but not without people coming forward and being willing to step up to the plate, because we really can make change. It's there. The opportunity is there. It's wide open. Anybody can run. So
anybody can run. And I know that you had an opponent against it. It was Lisa Tommaso. She was a favorite of the speaker, so you had a tough race. And despite that, despite the money and the mailings and all that, you prevailed. And you prevailed because you were there for the average families, trying to help them.
Yes, and I will continue to stay there.
And there are more people, I'm putting a pitch in here, there are more people who can step up. You don't have to be a political wizard, you don't have to have been involved in government in the past. You just have to have that willingness to help average families to get ahead, to have secure lives. You've done a great job so far, and I'm sure the people are going to respond to that, despite that bullseye that's on your back because you voted against the toll law.
It's okay. I love the bullseye. It just challenges me to keep on working harder for the people. That's all.
All right, and you've done other things for your district, so we're going to take a break right now. We're going to talk about some of the other things that have been percolating in the State House with your help.
Last week, writing on the RI Future blog, both Bob Plain and Steve Alquist attempted to divert attention away from the failure of government-controlled economics. They did so by putting real faces to the individual pain and suffering our government regularly causes through inept interventions. And they did it in the name of even more such blind government control. Are you kidding me? Bob Plain told the sad story of certified nursing assistant Aggie Clark, who cannot make ends meet on her nursing home salary. Steve Alquist spun the yarn of Leanne Quinn, whose disabled son lost a longtime professional caregiver because McDonald's was paying $10.25 per hour, which was a better deal for the aide, who simply had to take it. The moral of Plain's story was that the minimum wage should immediately be increased to $15 per hour, while Alquist insisted that compensation rates paid by Medicaid must be increased by at least 40%. Neither offered any suggestions as to where any of that money was supposed to come from. The pain and suffering of the two Rhode Islanders these left-wing bloggers cited is as real as it is extreme. It is in the conclusions both draw from these examples that their logic breaks down. Aggie Clark's problem is that while her chosen profession has many employers, it only has one paying customer, the federal government. The feds are trying to pay everyone who seeks payment. To do that with finite dollars, however, they have to forcibly reduce the amount each applicant receives. So the skilled nursing facilities get less each year for covered services. And no one is thinking about the plight of Angie and her coworkers. The story is exactly the same for the aide to Leanne Quinn's son. We are too far down the road to socialism for the immediate solution to simply be banning the feds from meddling in healthcare. What we have to do first is ban the feds from meddling in economic conditions. We need to insist that government costs go down, not skilled nursing costs. We need to insist that deregulation be instituted at all levels of government to cut down on the forced overhead expenses businesses incur. That would let them make some money. And that's not a bad thing, because it would give businesses leeway to raise the pay of their most valued employee. That would generate competition among coworkers to voluntarily meet higher standards. Do you see where this right-wing blogger is heading here? Liberate the economy and we'll have a growing meritocracy rather than a stagnating bureaucracy. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense Rhode Island. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we've been talking with Representative Sherry Roberts, who is representing Central Coventry and West Greenwich very well. Just to put a bow on our last segment, kind of tie that up, Electric Boat, and I just think this is terrific, has been working, you've been working with them to get this program into Coventry, extended on to West Greenwich, and hopefully to all Rhode Island children, because it has tremendous promise for them to not have to go to college, but to get good skills that will give them good jobs in the future, and help Electric Boat in our defense industry at the same time. So you said it might start in the fall in Coventry?
It's expected to start in the fall, yes.
Great. Did you know that there were 2 Republican secretaries of the Navy who actually got that business, the welding skin business, into Quonset?
No, I was not aware of that.
Yes, we had 2 Republican secretaries of the Navy. One everybody knows, that's John Chafee, and the other is William Middendorf, who was a secretary of the Navy and was very instrumental in making sure that we got that submarine work in Quonset. So good news, Republicans have done wonderful things and will continue to do wonderful things for Rhode Island. There's been an issue on the table now, well, only for about two weeks, and that's the Olneyville Tunnel. Does anybody else know what the Olneyville Tunnel is? It's the 610 connector, right? I know you were fighting with me against the toll law. Do you remember there being any conversation about a tunnel in Olneyville when all that was being rammed through?
Absolutely not.
No. Not
How
a
are they
lot.
going to afford this anyway?
Not a lot of transparency. I was going to ask questions about the 610 project, but even then there was absolutely no discussion about burying the highway and capping it and putting green space and roads up above. I mean, they're seriously talking about highways underneath and streets and parks up above. This is Boston's big dig. Did you hear anything when you were in the State House? Anybody talking about such an elaborate plan?
Not at all. Nothing. Zero. Zilch.
Zilch.
So
Zilch.
now it seems like they're going to get this toll money, and now all of a sudden now they have got another expense to pay for. I mean, what's...
Well, to me it's just a bait and switch, because during that entire debate, if you want to call it that, but the ramming that toll through, they talked about bridges. We have the most deficient bridges in Rhode Island. We need tolls to fix the deficient bridges, Rhode Island. And they really soft-pedaled the 610. I knew it was there. I was trying to drag information out of DOT on it, but no talk, none at all about a tunnel. And, you know, I understand that the people out there, and I really appreciate the fact that they called and they sent the emails and they raised their voices against the tolls. Now they're faced with this. It's up to $1 billion that they want to spend on this. Quite frankly, I think the big dig in Boston started small and grew to 7 times the original estimate. Were you able to go to any of the meetings, or were you at the State House this last week?
I was at the State House.
Yeah. Not a lot of reps went. I made the special, I made myself get there. It wasn't easy to do because we have on the same days, funny thing, on the same days that they had these meetings, we had to be in committees.
Because it's convenient, that's why.
Not to get the word out to the people who are supposed to be making the decisions, and they have had no information session for us in the State House so that all of us could get the information. Like I said, there's a real aversion to transparency and getting data and information out to people in our state from this administration. But one of the things that's really scary to me is they were talking about it being $400 million before the law was passed. Now it's in the meeting I went to, they were talking about $550 million. In the paper today, it was $995 million, and this all happened in about 2 weeks' time. So the longer this thing stays on the table, it's going to grow. And something that's really disturbing is this tunnel idea, or the capped highway. It's 1 mile now for $1 billion. 1 mile. And the director was saying that, well, that's preliminary. If they like it, they can extend it farther into Providence, the whole tunnel idea, out into Johnston, out into Cranston. At $1 billion a mile, this could be crushing to Rhode Island. Just crushing. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, a $45 million tax increase as it is could just blossom. What do you think we should be doing as representatives to help people fight against the tunnel? Any ideas?
Well, we just need to continue to educate them, of course, about what's going on, and give them the tools to know what to do. Sometimes they just don't know what to do. They're probably feeling helpless at this point because our government just overrides the people's will.
I'm exactly with you on that one too. We've fought so hard. People did rise up. They made the phone calls, they sent the emails, and they were slapped down. And they're asking me, what do we do? What do we do?
Well, some of this stuff I really believe can be reversed in the next election, as I was saying before. They have an opportunity. It's just that I think so many people are just not educated about what's going on, but yet they're voting, but they don't really know what's going on. There are many people who do, but not enough is what I'm saying. And they really need to pay attention to what their senator and their rep is voting on, what's going on, and take the opportunity this fall to get out there and really make some changes, vote in some new people who have obviously or clearly defied their will, because we have a real opportunity to reverse some of this stuff. It's just so unnecessary. All this stuff that's going on is just unnecessary.
It is an unnecessary burden on average Rhode Island families who are already struggling. I mean, the average household income has gone down 12% since 2008. It just didn't rebound. The number of jobs that we lost hasn't been made up. So we know Rhode Island families are in stress. And yet, they're not focusing on that in the State House. In fact, they're making it worse. The toll law is just the tip, I think, of the iceberg here. This tunnel is going to be so expensive and drag more and more money out of families. So it's replace and repeal, right?
Yes.
Replace the people who aren't paying attention to you, right, so they can repeal these laws. And I'm going to put in a special plea to give us more Republicans and independents. Sherry has been so good to help us, but we need more of her. if we're going to stop bad things from happening to Rhode Islanders. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing your thoughts with us, and we'll see you next week.
I did know that we in my hometown of Portsmouth have a licensed medical marijuana compassion center, one of the few in Rhode Island. Haven't visited there yet, but you never know. The list of approved health conditions that a little pot will help seems to be growing by the minute. Just need a doctor's prescription. A real MD, of course, not your cousin. The issue of substance abuse will not be going away anytime soon, as we good citizens on the planet Earth have long sought a way to control the stresses of life. We have come up with some unique solutions. One of them is the discovery that some plants which grow in the wild have narcotic effects. That is, they may affect our bodies in ways that make us happy, or at least not as sad as we might otherwise be. At some point in time, government stepped in and decided which of these substances would be legal and which would tend to land you in jail. Today, the hot topic is pot, which I recently found out comes in a whole variety of ingestible versions. The pot world has its own vocabulary. Most I have never heard of or seen in print. And that vocabulary grows every year as new varieties of weed hit the market. But there's another show. Today, we are focusing on what the Rhode Island legislature should be thinking about as the world of pot overwhelms the state. The most immediate issue is the possibility that Massachusetts voters could vote on legislation in November. That really is a huge issue. If Massachusetts gave Rhode Islanders another reason to cross the border, we will definitely need toll gates at every exit road. Why the concern? Well, pot is legal for medical and recreational use in D.C. and 23 other states. 4 of these states fully legalized use. If you visit Colorado, Washington, Alaska, or Oregon, you can smoke and joke legally. Now, I did lots of reading on the results of first Oregon and then Washington state going to pot. The news of what people do when they live in border states are always interesting from an economic point of view. When one state goes to pot, the other must follow, or bunches of money leave the potless state. Much of the same argument as the gas tax differential with Massachusetts. Now, I did some research on what's been happening in Colorado since they voted for pot. Colorado legalized pot in 2012, voting 54.8 to 45.1 to light up. 90% of those voters surveyed by the Denver Post in 2014 would vote the same way they did in 2012. Seems that in 2014, the Colorado medical and recreational shops sold $669 million of product. Now that number went to $996 million in 2015. That meant that in 2014, the state got $76 million in taxes and licensing fees. In 2015, they got $135 million. The good folks in Colorado tax recreational marijuana in 3 ways. The first is the standard 2.9 sales tax, a 10% special marijuana sales tax, and a 15% excise tax on wholesale transfers. Getting the pot legalized, Amendment 64, through the voting booth was helped by requiring the first $40 million raised from the excise tax to be put immediately into school construction fund. Not the general state fund like we would tend to do here in Rhode Island. So we are talking about serious money. I know so little about pot, I had to find a website that's all pot. And like all things in America, there are hundreds of places to go to get up to speed with pot. I chose The Cannabist. This is the site of all sites. I would like to quote Jake Brown from the Cannabis staff reviewing the pot strain of the day in 2014. That strain would be Blue Dream. Now, see if you can make sense of his words. It would be easy to mistake this, Blue Dream, for straight blueberry in a blind smell test, with the sweet fruit notes emanating from the bag. And there's a lingering pine spice that I really enjoy hidden under there. The hairs are trademark haze. However, they're almost a light peach hue and incredibly abundant. Combine that with a generous amount of trichome coverage and it's reminiscent of a first frost, unquote. You know, I think pot speak is almost as evasive as wine tasting speak. Thank you for watching, and God bless.